Hi, I'm Terri McCarthy. I'm at the Cool Tools Studio today, and I will be showing you how to solder two textures together without solder flooding over your bottom layer of texture. We will be using a solder stop. We're going to be soldering an applique, which is basically taking one piece of metal and soldering it to another. And in this instance, it's going to be flat. I have two pieces of metal. They both are textured, so that can be problematic in that your solder can flow connecting your two pieces, but then wherever there has been flux that has flowed, the solder will flow out into your bottom pattern, and that makes you have take a lot of time to clean that up in the end when you're completing and finishing your piece. So what I have done is I've taken my top piece of applique and I laid it down on my bottom sheet. And I took a Sharpie marker and I simply just drew around the outside edge of the top piece for the applique. I then like to take whiteout, and from my Sharpie marker line, I will paint out with my whiteout. It's good if you can find water-based whiteout. It's less toxic to use, but it's dirt, and solder cannot flow where you have dirt on metal. So I have my bottom piece cut and cleaned up. I have my whiteout down, and I'm going to be adding flux to the top of my applique because you must have flux to have the solder flow. And use a very thin coat. That can go off to the side, and notice that I have it hanging over the edge of my solder block. That makes it easier for me to pick it up with my tweezers and place it when it's ready to be placed. I'm going to take more flux and I'm going to add it to my bottom piece of the applique, and I'm going to paint flux just on the inside of my magic marker line. And again, don't overflux. At this point, I'm going to cut some solder, and I'm going to cut 3 little pallions of solder. I have easy solder in a wire form, and I have a solder snip. This also can cut wire. I don't use it just for solder, but I cut my little pieces of wire when I'm doing wire work. And to cut this safely, you have part of the snip that is flat on the back side, and the inside has a groove. If you take your solder and just snip it, it's going to fly across the room on you. So if you have your solder placed in the middle of the soldering area of this snip, and you put your finger below the end of the snip, you can capture it and drop it into your flux tray. Again, I'm going to have it in the middle of my pliers, my snip down, it's on my finger, and then I can drop it into the flux tray. And for this application, I'm not going to use a lot of solder. I'm going to use smaller snips of solder. I pick them up and place them on the bottom piece of the applique. And when your solder sticks to your tweezers, you can get it off with your solder pick. And I'm placing these solder chips just inside from that drawn line. I'm going to pick up my applique with my tweezers and put it on top of the solder snips so that it's floating. I'm going to have a soldering pick in one hand so that I can touch down if I need to direct it while the solder's flowing. So I'm going to start my torch, and I'll have a little larger flame this time. I have more metal, so I have to get both pieces of metal hot. I'm first going to put the heat on the lower piece of metal and get that preheated, and at the same time it's allowing the moisture in the flux to evaporate. So I'm heating my bottom piece, and what you're going to be looking for is you first will see that top applique settle when your solder melts. Now when solder melts, that just means it's melted, it's not flown. Now you can see how it's settled down. Press down, make sure it's in place, and now I'm going to continue to heat my metal until I see solder come around the outer edge of my copper applique. And what you're looking for is a little silver line that will form along that edge. Okay, and there it comes. It's flowing all around. You shut your torch off. Pick up your applique and quench slowly. So now this will need to get cleaned up in the pickle pot, and then we'll brass brush it, and you'll be able to see that you don't have solder all over the bottom layer of your brass. This is the piece that is brass with an etched piece of copper soldered to the top. It has been pickled and it has been brass brushed, and then it has been patinaed and polished off. I'm now going to give this piece a little form. I find that pieces are more interesting if they're not totally flat. So I have this wonderful little swage block, the punch, and I like to rotate it around and bring it up so that you have a little more interest to your piece, a little more dimension.
Visit our Learning Center at cooltools.us for more cool jewelry making videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to sign up for our email list to be the first to hear about new videos, new products, and other cool stuff from Cool Tools.